in the heart of Silicon Valley, where ambition and innovation collide. A brilliant young woman named Elizabeth Holmes held a captivating vision, revolutionizing blood testing with a single drop of blood. Her company, Theranos, named with a blend of therapy and diagnosis, promised to disrupt the healthcare industry as we knew it. Investors, enamored by her charisma and bold claims, poured in billions. Theranos was the shining star, the future of medicine. Picture the year 2003, a time of immense promise in Silicon Valley. Tech giants are forging a new frontier, and the idea that the next world-changing innovation could come from a dorm room or a garage feels tantalizingly possible. It's in this environment that a 19-year-old Stanford dropout named Elizabeth Holmes steps forward with an idea that sounds like something out of science fiction, a revolution in blood testing. Blood draws are a universal pain point. Many require multiple vials drawn by needles, often leaving behind bruises and dread in patients, especially children. Theranos, Holmes promises, would change all that. Her company's name, a combination of therapy and diagnosis, speaks to her expansive vision. They'd harness a few drops of blood, obtained by a simple finger prick, to run hundreds of tests, everything from cholesterol to cancer markers quickly, cheaply, and conveniently. Holmes herself is part of the pitch. Dressed in her signature black turtlenecks, clearly inspired by her idol Steve Jobs, she cultivates an air of intensity and focus. She drops out of Stanford, not to party, but with a single-minded goal of building a company that would democratize healthcare. Her youth isn't seen as a drawback, but rather as proof of her disruptive spirit. The concept is undeniably compelling. Investors, including Silicon Valley royalty and powerful figures far outside the tech sphere, are captivated. Imagine, no more waiting in labs, affordable tests for everyone, potentially catching dangerous diseases in their earliest stages, with a technology small enough to sit on a pharmacy counter. Money pours in, early doubts are dismissed. The media laps up the story, a young woman shattering glass ceilings, promising a healthier world. Holmes is everywhere. She graces magazine covers, gives TED-style talks exuding quiet confidence, and builds a board of directors filled with former politicians and military leaders, lending Theranos an aura of gravitas and trustworthiness. It's more than a hot startup. It's a movement. The allure lies not just in the promise of painless testing, but in the idea that Holmes represents a new type of entrepreneur. She isn't flashy, she's understated, a scientist first, a CEO second. She talks less about profits and more about saving lives. This image obscures what lurks beneath the surface, a win at all costs. Mentality more common among Wall Street titans than world-changing idealists. Theranos claimed to have created the Edison, a sleek, mysterious machine that could run hundreds of tests from a pinprick of blood. No more painful needles, no more vials shipped to labs. Results would be fast and cheap. Yet, the Edison didn't work as advertised. It was inaccurate, it was unreliable, and Theranos seemed more focused on crafting an image of innovation than on delivering real results. Ignoring internal doubts, Theranos pressed on. They struck a deal with Walgreens to put Theranos wellness centers inside pharmacy stores, a stamp of legitimacy in the eyes of the public. Holmes, dressed in her trademark black turtlenecks a la Steve Jobs, graced magazine covers. She was the darling of the media, a female tech icon shattering glass ceilings. But behind the sleek facade, the cracks were spreading. The twist. In 2015, John Carrero, an investigative reporter at the Wall Street Journal, started digging. Former employees, alarmed by Theranos practices, painted a troubling picture. Tests were being run on traditional machines, not the Edison. Results were being fudged to hide problems. It was a biotech house of cards propped up by hype and deception. For years, Elizabeth Holmes cultivated an aura of mystery around Theranos technology. The Edison, named in an homage to the great inventor, was her secret weapon. Sleek and compact, it was said to revolutionize blood testing by using only a finger prick and providing quick, comprehensive results. But the reality was vastly different. While Holmes talked about proprietary nanotechnology and innovative miniaturized lab machinery inside the Edison, the truth was far more mundane. The Edison simply couldn't do what she claimed. Its results were unreliable at best, often dangerously wrong at worst. Knowing this, Theranos resorted to a tangled web of deception to keep the illusion alive. They ran many tests not on the Edison, but on traditional commercial lab machines, the very kind they claimed to be disrupting. These machines were hidden behind locked doors when potential investors came to tour. Samples were sometimes diluted, a desperate attempt to make a too small blood draw yield enough volume for standard machines to run. Internally, Theranos employees began to raise concerns, but their voices were stifled by a culture of fear and retaliation. One of the most shocking twists was how Theranos manipulated their public demonstrations. When Walgreens executives came to observe an Edison demo, they weren't aware that the blood samples were taken via traditional needle draw and tested on standard machines. When journalists were given tours, the demos were carefully staged to avoid showing the Edison's limitations. The company went so far as to threaten legal action against anyone who dared question their methods. Lawyers' letters became weapons. Some former employees, bound by non-disclosure agreements they'd signed, in the heady rush of joining a world-changing startup, stayed silent, racked by ethical dilemmas. Yet, the deception went beyond simply concealing that the Edison didn't work. Theranos actively falsified results. When some tests came back with worryingly abnormal results, Theranos, instead of alerting patients and doctors, quietly ran them on commercial machines, reporting only the normal results. They claimed to be working with the military, deploying their technology in combat zones, when in reality it wasn't reliable enough for field use. The audacity of the deception was breathtaking. Theranos, led by its charismatic yet ruthless founder, gambled that they could fake it till they made it. They bet that enough money and hype would buy them time to either fix their technology or find a buyer willing to overlook its flaws. That bet, eventually, would destroy them. Climax. By 2015, the facade painstakingly constructed by Elizabeth Holmes was finally crumbling. Investors, once so eager to pour their millions into Theranos, were growing suspicious. Too many promises had gone unfulfilled. Questions were piling up, demanding answers that Holmes and her inner circle could no longer evade. John Carreiro, the Wall Street Journal reporter, became the catalyst for the downfall. He'd received tips from former employees and concerned medical experts who saw the yawning gap between Theranos' claims and its reality. Carreiro dug relentlessly, chasing leads and persuading frightened sources to break their silence. His series of expos, published in the fall of 2015, ripped the mask off Theranos. Each article was a bombshell. The Edison, it turned out, was wildly inaccurate. Theranos was secretly using commercial machines for most tests. Results were fudged. Employees were pressured to stay quiet. The image of a revolutionary biotech company dissolved, replaced by a disturbing picture of deception and potential patient endangerment. Holmes went on the offensive. She attacked Carreiro, dismissing his reporting as lies fueled by disgruntled former employees. She doubled down on her claims, insisting the Edison was merely going through growing pains. That any criticisms were attempts to stifle female-led innovation. Some still believed her. Theranos held powerful sway with its high-profile board and its media-crafted image. But the damage was done. Regulators swooped in. The FDA launched an investigation. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services (CMS), finding serious deficiencies in Theranos' laboratory practices, banned Holmes from owning or operating a lab for 2 years. Walgreens, once a public face of Theranos' legitimacy, severed ties. The climax was a slow burn implosion. Each new expose, each regulatory sanction, and each lawsuit peeled away another layer until the stark truth was undeniable. Yet, Holmes refused to admit defeat. Her public appearances took on an air of tragic delusion, repeating the same talking points as her empire crumbled around her. The legal news tightened. In 2018, Holmes and Theranos' former coup, Sunny Balwani, were charged with multiple counts of fraud, stemming from their deception of investors, doctors, and patients. Balwani's trial came first, painting a picture of a toxic corporate culture where results were manipulated and concerns were crushed. Holmes' trial, delayed due to her pregnancy, was a media circus in 2021. No longer the confident young CEO, she took the stand in her own defense, a desperate and ultimately unsuccessful tactic. She claimed ignorance, blamed others, and portrayed herself as a naive visionary who was perhaps overly optimistic. The jury wasn't fooled. In January 2022, Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts related to defrauding investors. The facade of brilliance crumbled completely. In November 2022, she was sentenced to over 11 years in prison. The Theranos climax is a stark one, a blend of the fall of a charismatic Icarus and a chilling reminder of the lengths some will go to in the pursuit of wealth and acclaim. It was a fraud built not on a single lie, but on an intricate layering of deceptions. In the end, what brought Theranos down wasn't just its faulty technology, but the corrosive culture of deception and ambition built by Holmes herself. In 2018, Theranos was dissolved. Holmes was indicted on multiple counts of fraud. Her trial in 2021 became a spectacle, a dissection of ambition gone wrong. In January 2022, she was convicted on 4 counts. Her sentence, handed down in November 2022, was 11 years in prison. Theranos is a story of broken promises and betrayed trust. It was a potent blend of blind ambition, misleading marketing, and Silicon Valley's obsession with the next big thing. Holmes, once hailed as an innovator, became a cautionary tale. The Theranos scandal exposed the dangers of pouring money into unproven technologies, of believing in an image rather than substance. It was a reminder that even in the cutthroat world of tech, where hype often runs ahead of reality, there is still a need for due diligence, for skepticism, and for accountability. Theranos teaches us to look behind the dazzling smiles and slick pitches. It underscores the importance of asking tough questions, of demanding evidence rather than merely believing promises. The fall of Theranos should serve as a reminder that the road to revolution is often built on careful science and ethics, not on charisma and bluster.